Welcome back to the channel. Crypto Trend Trader here, taking a look at Bitcoin. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. These markets are extremely volatile, so please do your own research and trade responsibly. Oh man, we got a lot to talk about. So I want to start off by saying that I did in fact get taken out with my stop loss on my short position here, and then obviously it has sold off completely below it. That is unfortunate, but again, I was looking for it to basically reverse off of either the 200 exponential, or if we got up here to the 200 simple. At this point in time, nothing has really changed for me. I am still bearish overall based on the moving averages. I do want to start off by saying, obviously, as we're looking at the daily right here, we did test up, and then it looks like we're getting rejected by the 200. We still have plenty of time before the daily closes. But if it was going to close something like this below the 200 with the big whip on top, like I'm looking at that as a strong rejection and expecting continuation back down to the downside, back down to at least test, some of these other moving averages. And then we'll have to see where we go from there. But at this point in time, it's looking like a rejection. Now, if we go to a longer time frame now, I want to actually switch over to the weekly, and I want to compare this situation to previously. We sold off down here, and we essentially based off of this 89, and then we got the pop up to the 10, and we flipped the SAR over. So that's exactly what we did here. We based off the 89, got the pop up. We made it above the 10, above the 21, and even closed above all the moving averages before we got the violent sell-off like bearish engulfing. But we flipped the SAR right there. And you see prior to that, it was this huge downtrend. And we just did the exact same thing again. We flipped the SAR right here, and we got the move up. But now we sold back off below the 21. Like previously when we did this, we got rejected immediately by the 21, or we closed above it and then got the strong rejection. So far this looks a little different. And again, based on where we close off, if we're above, and essentially some of these moving averages will correspond based on different time frames. So as we're switching between time frames, you'll see that if you multiply the time frame by like the moving average, you'll get the same moving average on a longer time frame. So but as you see here, previously when we got rejected at that point, we got rejected with the wick, and then we got the continuation, closed above it, and then we sold off. This one we got rejected, but we got the wick above it. So it's still possible we close this weekly like above here, with a powerful move, get the close above it, and then get the sell-off or get the consolidation and move up. But at this point in time, it looks exactly like this situation. If we get this pop up and then it sells off over the next couple weeks, then essentially what I would be looking for is that consolidation followed by capitulation. So that's nothing has changed on the longer time frames for me. And now going back to the daily, now I'm going to turn off the moving average here, and I'm going to flip over to our support resistance. And if you look, basically this triangle was where we were at initially. We broke down, tried to come back up, and couldn't get above like that solid base that we had formed this whole time. So after we basically got rejected and came down, we tested the bottom of this descending channel that we've been in, just like we were testing the top of the descending channel. And that's why I was expecting us to get rejected here. But now it's possible that if you go wick to wick on this channel, that we could get a move all the way up as high as like the 618 here at like 89.70 and still stay inside of this descending channel and basically get prices like all the way up to the 618 at like 8900. So we could essentially sell back off, come down, and then come back up and test the top here and still complete this full wave structure and everything. So let's not put that out of the cards yet, that we could still get a powerful move back up. And now if we zoom in, like actually we don't even need to. Essentially what's happened here so far is we came up to the 0.5 in green right here. We were consolidating at the 618 for a long time, and that's where we got our move up from it. So now if we come from the 618 and come back up to the 0.5 and get rejected in this range here, what I would expect to happen is a continued sell-off back down to the next level. And that next level is going to be our 786. And if you see where the 786 would correspond, it's down here at the bottom of the channel, somewhere around like the end of February, essentially is what we'd be looking at. Anytime after that is going to correspond with the 786, and that's where we have like this previous support range right here, and that's coming in right at 5,500, which to me looks like the most likely target to the downside. If we get that move to the downside, that's the most likely target. Now, what could potentially happen here is we essentially just get this sell-off, come back down on, if we look at this first wave of this move up, we came up, we sold off back down to the 618, and then we got our second wave. This one has topped out, obviously, and so we can assume that if it sells back off now, that it's going to come back down somewhere between the 0.5 and the 618 as well. So we're looking for this region right here, which is going to be like 74.75 to 76.50. So that would be my next target for a bounce if we get continuation, which is going to correspond with the top of the wave 1. So the 3 would sell off, come down, form our 4 right around the base of the 1, and then we could get continuation back to the upside, take out the high right here, and then basically max this out somewhere near like that 618 at like the 9,000 range, and then we wouldn't have taken out the structure, nothing changes, and then we sell back off to the downside. But most importantly, what we want to look at right now is where we're located here in this whole structure is we're very close to the top of this. So risk reward, if we don't break to the upside from here versus to the downside from here, the risk reward is very high to the downside. So the potential for a strong trade to the downside and stay inside this channel is still very good. So, and I do want to switch over to a different chart here also, because you can see how this is playing out a little differently on different charts. This is the Bitstamp chart, and if you look at the resistance on this one, the way it played out, the channel is actually like from wick to wick has a ton more touches here. And if you look at it like that, we basically did the exact same thing that we had done previously. We came all the way to the top and then we sold off. Come all the way to the top, and now it looks like what we're getting ready to do is sell off. And the market's going to lose faith real quick as soon as we don't see continuation. Now, what I would see based on the support resistance breakout here is if we were come back down here and we could base back off this area in like that 7,700 range, and then we could basically get our retest and then our breakout of the channel, I would get bullish on this whole situation and expect further continuation to the upside. But right now, what it looks like is happening is exactly what I said way back when. I mean, if you look back at my last few videos, you'll see I called right here that we were essentially going to top out this head and shoulders pattern, sell off, and then we were going to form the other shoulder of the inverted head and shoulder. That's exactly what happened. We got the breakout, which is exactly what I had said too in the video, and I even said we were going to break out and then underperform. We were going to get the head and shoulders, but we weren't going to get the full measured move up here. We were going to hit the resistance, underperform, sell back off, and then essentially continue to the downside. So far, that's exactly what happened. And if you didn't see those videos, I encourage you to go back and take a look, because you can see we literally called this entire move exactly how it's played out. Now, granted, I did get stopped out of my trade here again when it broke a little higher to the upside, but I have no problem re-entering the trade. Let me switch back over to a shorter time frame here, and I'll show you exactly what I'm looking to happen here. And I should have already re-entered the trade, but I have a rule basically where I don't just rush back into a trade after I get stopped out or I take my loss or whatever, just so you're not like fueled by emotion immediately just re-entering a trade, because it kind of defeats the purpose of the stop loss. But what I was going to do is, as soon as this candle took out the low of these previous two, I was going to re-enter my short here. So when this closed, I would have entered my short right there, and obviously that would have been a nice trade already. But again, I didn't want to just rush back in after getting taken out by my stop loss. And you'll see we did get the third sell on the TJD Stokes slope in a row, but we still have not exited the red zone yet. So it is still possible we're going to come back down here and find support and then move back to the upside. But we'll pay attention to the on balance volume. It's getting ready to cross over. CCI is already crossed back over. Just want to pull up a couple of these different indicators. Wada TAR is still strengthening to the upside on the daily. On the daily, this could keep going, but again, this looks exactly like a situation like this where we're getting ready to get our little capitulation move. Let me switch to the 4-hour here, and it looks like we're topping out on pretty much everything. We're going to see what happens here. I would love to see one more red dot, but I doubt if it's going to happen. I don't we'll see what happens here. Obviously it's looking more bearish now with a candle like that coming into the market. But, it's definitely still possible we're going to come back down to the 76.50 range, find support, and then get our continuation to the upside. And again, that's going to line up with a lot of other stuff. So potentially, let me switch back to the 4-hour again. I think, there is a lot of potential here, basically, that we would come back down, retest our breakout point, the 618, and then we could get continuation. I think we'll definitely get a reaction off the 0.5 and the 618 here. It's more like, will we get continuation? But at this point in time, this is our most important fib levels. I mean, you can see how we're reacting off of this purple fib level. We couldn't get above this 236. We finally break above it, and we shot all the way up to the 0.5. That's 2 fib levels like we always talk about. So now what we expect to happen is come back down to the 382. If we can come back down here and find our support 2 fib levels down, I would expect to move back up, or at least a reaction rally, 1 up, and then continued sell back off. And then this is going to look a lot more bearish, obviously. But as far as all this is playing out, I did take a loss on that one. It's very unfortunate. Had I not had a stop loss in place, I would be in profit right now, so that's great. But that's not how we trade. We trade responsibly, put the stop loss in place, and then you re-enter when the timing is right, when your system tells you. And it's the same as with this breakout. Essentially, I was expecting this breakout and everything, but it just broke out a little more powerfully, and I think that's just like essentially kinetic energy. It's like stored up energy in the market, people waiting to be bullish. Because the truth is, with Bitcoin and crypto, people want to be bullish on these assets. They want them to go to higher prices. And they will. It's just a matter of when the market is ready versus when you're ready. And when you're ready is irrelevant. So we are just sort of waiting to see how this all plays out. But it does look like at this point in time, that we essentially are getting that rejection at the top of the channel, and we're getting the underperforming inverted head and shoulders like we talked about. What I'm looking for here now is essentially we'll see if we can find a little bit of support on the shorter time frames. If we can come back down here and basically rally off of the SAR or the 382 or any of this, just now we have a bunch of support beneath us. If we can just find any support in this zone and essentially get continuation back up, I think any support bounce that we can get out of this area here is going to at least let us try to retest the top of the range. So if we can get a bounce back up here, it's essentially like a 10% move back up. So even if you don't want to take the counter trend trade, because we are still in a downtrend, even if you don't want to take that trend to the upside, you're essentially able to enter your short from a much better position. So then we can essentially take a short off of, let's say we came down to the 618 and then we get the move back up to the 382. Even if we get a little continuation off that, we can take the short off of the 382, and then potentially you're looking at essentially like this whole entire channel as your range for the short, taking out potentially a new low. But even if you just look at it in like the short term, you would expect, obviously, if we found support at the 618 here and got the bounce back up and then that failed, you would expect us to come back down to like the 786 or something. So again, you're looking at like another 9% to the downside. And depending if you're looking to scalp or swing trade or just long-term hodl, invest, there's a lot of different options in this market. It's just important that you just distinguish to yourself, and then distinguish like in your portfolio what percentage of everything is going to get allocated to which, what percentage of your assets in your long-term holdings are going to be in different categories, and then also like what percentage of your total investments or portfolio is going to be specifically for trading. And you need to stick to that. So even if you take like a 5% loss on a trade, it might be 1% loss on your trading account or less, and in all reality a 1% loss on your trading account might be 0.1% of your overall holdings.